You told me not more than 20 minutes ago as we record this that you're 82, but you feel 32. How good do you feel today?
Maybe 31.
If ever you needed proof that it's never too late to improve your health, you're about to get this proof right now. My guest today is Vivian Amos Brown, and she is a medical marvel and an inspiration to all. And I am so excited, Vivian, that you're here to share your story with us today. Thanks so much for making the time.
Oh, you're so welcome. And it's my pleasure to be here with you and an honor to be.
Oh, believe you me, knowing what I do about your story and what we're about to tell over the next half hour, 45 minutes, the honor is all mine. Believe you me. And I think that everybody watching right now is going to feel the same way, because let's just start right away with the fact that you told me not more than 20 minutes ago as we record this that you're 82, but you feel 32. How good do you feel today?
Maybe 31.
Maybe 31, but it wasn't always that way, correct?
You know what? As I said, I have been interested in nutrition since the early 70s, and I used to take tons of supplements, but I ate meat. Didn't do too much dairy because I had chronic sinusitis, and I didn't eat a lot of vegetables. Because in the early 70s, some of those doctors who I studied said it's okay to eat meat. So I took their word for it. And so consequently, even though I was overweight, I went up to 224. And 204, I was 224 pounds, by the way. This morning, I was 117. And so even though I was eating meat and not as many vegetables as I should have, I still felt well most of the time. I felt pretty good.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So you were over 200 pounds for most of your adult life. You're like me. God blessed you with a lot of things, but height was not one of them. You're 5'3" or 5'4" on a good day, right?
Well, the last couple of times my height was taken, I was a little under 5'3".
It happens to the best of us. It happens to the best of us. Did you feel like a lot of stress on your joints, a lot of aches and pains?
No.
No. Okay. So what were some of the things that you did notice in terms of your health and some of the challenges that you were facing?
Oh, okay. I did have some challenges in 2017 when I found out that I had AFib, a serious heart condition is what they told me. And I knew I had to take it serious because that was the second time I had gone to ER for AFib. And at the time, I had brain fog. My knees were in all kind of braces because I was told that I needed knee surgery. I had torn meniscus and bone-on-bone arthritis is what I had. And I remember this every night I would go home because I'm a real estate agent also, and I'm still a real estate agent today. Matter of fact, I did real estate earlier today. So I was on Dr. Nimick's, the Total Health Institute's program for 5 days, because every day night I used to come home and I would sit down and relax, and I would just feel throbbing in my right shoulder and my right knee. Throb. I went on that raw food diet, and after 5 days, I was sitting on the bed, and it dawned on me after a while, there was no throbbing, no pain. 5 days into it. You know, I haven't had any pain since. Yeah, so it dawned on me there was no pain. And my brain fog went away, and I have not had that since. My health started to really improve, and I was there for the AFib and the cirrhosis of the liver and the diabetes. That is why I went to the Total Health Institute. I was about 200 pounds, and what happened was 65 pounds just melted off of me in a year's time. Actually, I had met a doctor who put me on the keto diet, a functional doctor, and that's how I ended up in the hospital with AFib, because I started eating bacon and grease and all of that stuff that I didn't eat so much of, even though I ate meat.
So let's talk about that day that you wound up in the emergency room. You, I believe, were walking home and you had groceries in your hand and you just kind of got dizzy. You had to sit down. Walk us through what happened that day.
I live in a condominium, and I was walking down the hallway with 2 bags of food from Whole Foods. And in those 2 bags, there was a lot of grass-fed chicken and turkey. Those were my main meats. I was not a red meat eater until I went on the keto diet. And all of a sudden, I started feeling bad. Well, most of the time, I feel good, even back then when I was 224. And so I opened the door, put my 2 grocery bags down, and sat in the chair by the door. And I felt right up here in my chest, and I felt that racing. And I knew, I said, uh-oh, AFib. I was trying to decide if I was going to ER or urgent care. So in my head, I said, well, I'll go to urgent care because it's cheaper than ER. It costs less. And so I went to the urgent care. And after I put my meat up, by the way, because my husband, I couldn't trust him to put it up because at the time he had Alzheimer's and end-stage heart disease. So I said, they might keep me because they kept me the first time. And they did keep me because that was Mother's Day weekend of 2017. In a few minutes, I was in an ambulance on my way to ER.
Wow.
Yes. My liver enzymes were 672 and 542. That's how high my liver enzymes were. And they said I needed beta blockers, blood thinners, and aspirin for the rest of my life. And I need to take this. I knew I needed to take it serious. And so what happened was my granddaughter, matter of fact, my precious granddaughter who just recently passed, she came to pick me up, and I asked her to take me to Walgreens so I could tell them to restock that medication because I won't be taking it. And I never will remember. She said, oh, please, just for a little while, Grandma, I don't want you to die. It's what she said to me. So I never did go and get the prescription. And at the time, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. But I knew that I was not going to do that. And so after a couple of days, so I'm not very techie, not very good with technology. So I went on the internet, and after a few days, I started plugging in places that I thought, Googling places that I thought would be able to help me. I thought really, I didn't think there was any place in Illinois. I thought I had to go out of town. And up popped this Total Health Institute. I guess I plugged in heart disease or something, the right thing, because they have a lot of heart patients and a lot of cancer patients. And on the cover was this young lady, I think she was in her 30s, who had breast cancer, 3 or 4 stage. And she went there and they were able to save her life. So I said, that's the type of place I'm looking for. So I called, and if that was on a Wednesday, I called and they said I could come in on Saturday for my interview with Dr. Nimick. And I asked my daughter-in-law to go with me, drive there with me, because it was 100 miles round trip from where I live, 50 miles each way. But I didn't care. And so at the time, I was meditating with a group of people. And when I told them this, I have not learned to this day how to keep my mouth closed. All my business is public. I tell it all. Anyway, they thought I was crazy. And some of them told me that and said I was being taken advantage of because it costs a lot of money and I didn't have it. I didn't have that money, and my daughter-in-law was shocked at what it would cost. But I tell you what, in a week's time, I had every penny.
I bet.
Every penny. Because, if you determine you're going to do something, if there's a will, there's a way. It was more important to me to get that money together than it was for me to take drugs and be on beta blockers and blood thinners and be 200 pounds. If I had not made that decision, just think will I be today? I might not even be living.
Right.
If I had not made that decision to do what I did.
Yeah.
So many people being against it.
And, Vivian, I think that there's probably a lot of people who are watching right now who themselves have never experienced what it's like to have a bout with AFib. So you mentioned needing to sit down when you came through the door with those groceries. But for those of us who have not ourselves experienced it, what was that like for you? Were you very dizzy, or just kind of walk us through what that's actually like?
Actually, I just had a general feeling of feeling unwell, and my heart was racing. And I knew that because every time I felt my chest on my left side, I could feel the high speed. And since I'd had November of probably 2004 or 2003, I had driven myself to the hospital. I drove myself now. And when I got downstairs, I had forgotten my key. So I had to go to a neighbor's house to find my key. I didn't call an ambulance or anything. And I drove myself to urgent care, and my car was still there after my granddaughter picked me up.
I find it intriguing and slightly amazing that you were able to, despite the fact you were going through that, drive yourself to the hospital. Like, you are a brave soul, Vivian. That's that's something else right there.
Well, we have to do what we have to do, you know.
So what's going through your mind at this time when you get to the hospital? This is your second bout with it, so I'm sure you had somewhat of an idea of what was going on. But nonetheless, if your symptoms are as bad or bad enough to force you to go seek urgent care, I mean, there had to have been some worry running through your mind, right?
Yes, because I felt that they were a little worse than they were the first time. And since I had been in the hospital with that, they kept me overnight. I stayed overnight that time. And since I had gone to the hospital for the same condition, and it was a few years in between, you know, 204 to 217 is when I went. And I knew that something was seriously wrong. And I knew that I did need to go to the hospital. And generally, I don't trust hospitals and doctors. That might be why I have cancer, because that knot has really and truly been in my breast for a long time. But sometimes you need them, and this was that time. And so I just drove myself there, and they said that I had a serious heart condition and I need to stay there for a couple of, and that's what happened.
But were you surprised by this, given the fact that you, at the time, were on the keto diet, working with a doctor who, you know, was telling you to eat this way because it was healthy, and yet here you are with a serious heart condition sitting in the hospital? Well,
I didn't find out till afterwards that it was probably the keto that did it to me, the keto diet. Because even though I was a meat eater, I started eating short ribs of beef and bacon and eggs and all of that because her directions, her diet, because I wanted to lose weight. And you know what, Chuck? To this day, I have those labs. The first labs I did for my visit, labs 6 months later, and labs about 3 months later. And each time my labs were getting worse and worse and worse, and she couldn't figure out why.
You were in the hospital for how long now? A couple days, 3 days?
Mother's Day weekend, from Saturday to Monday night.
Saturday to Monday night.
2017, yes.
Well, that's not exactly the Mother's Day weekend you were envisioning, I'm sure.
No, but I had quite a few visitors, so it was nice.
Okay. I'm curious because one of the other things that is on your sheet here, you mentioned it briefly, is cirrhosis of the liver as well. When did that pop up on the radar?
When I was in the hospital, they told me my liver enzymes were 672 and 542, and that I needed to go and see the hematologist ASAP, like yesterday.
Wow.
And they said they suspected cirrhosis of the liver. So it all went together, actually. All that meat eating and dairy eating and fat eating, coconut oil eating. So it makes sense.
It sounds that way. And I mean, my goodness. So you've got the problem with your heart. Now you've got this problem with the liver. How were your spirits coming out of there Monday night? Other than, I'm sure, just being happy to leave the hospital, there must have been a lot of other stuff rattling around in your mind.
Yeah, it was. I'm not going to do what they said I should do. That's what was rattling around in my mind. I'm going to find someone who will help me. And it's not going to be beta blockers, blood thinners, and aspirin, and whatever medication the liver doctor would have given me, specialist would have given me. I was not going to do it. If it meant that I died, I was not going to do it.
That's a bold statement. Why such strong resolve there?
Because I didn't think that would help me, because I was doing all those things that they said I should do, and I was getting worse instead of better. And plus, I was interested in nutrition, and I wanted to explore that more, and had been since the early 1970s. And I wanted to explore this lifestyle more.
What was your sneaking suspicion then about nutrition? Did you kind of have an inkling as you were going through this over that Mother's Day weekend that the keto diet may have played a role in this latest episode?
I found out later after I started talking with Dr. Kim Williams. He was here in Chicago area, and he became my heart doctor. And there used to be a program on TV called The Incurables. I don't know if you remember that. And there were all these people with cancers and all of these lifestyle diseases. I looked at it every week. And they will all be healed with nutrition or supplements They were not healed with drugs and procedures and medication. And so after I left the hospital, I said to myself, I've been studying nutrition for all of these years. It's about time for me. Either I believe what I've been studying or I don't. And it's about time for me to find someone who can help me. And I'm going to find someone who can help me. And it won't be beta blockers, blood thinners, and aspirin, and liver hepatitis drugs. And they also said I was pre-diabetic.
You got the pre-diabetes diagnosis that same weekend as well?
Yes.
Well, daggone. I mean, how much are they going to pile on your plate, you poor thing? I mean, what was the reaction of your family at that point? Being the patient, that's a heavy burden, but for your loved ones as well, I would imagine that was quite the weight.
Well, they've always known I was a little off, a little crazy. I go about doing things.
There's one in every family, Vivian. There's one in every family.
Well, there's me. And my niece is a registered nurse. And my sister told her what was going on. And so my niece called me and said, well, at least you can take the medication until you decide or find someone who's going to help you. I didn't say anything, but I knew I couldn't take the medication. And I wasn't going to do that. And so I knew I don't know. I just knew I was going to find someone to help me.
And you did, and it sounds like you found somebody pretty quickly. What was the treatment plan that was laid out?
Well, he put all of his clients on a raw food, plant-based diet. The only cooked food he would allow was quinoa. You had to, and he, especially his cancer and heart patients, 3 or 4 cloves of garlic every night. So that's one of the things I started doing in January when I found out I had this lump. I started doing some of the things that I learned there. And he would give us oxygen therapy and a lymph node therapy, colonics, and he gave some people vitamins through their veins, but my veins were so small, and the nurse he had there, she couldn't find my veins, so he gave me extra lymph node treatments because they didn't have anyone who could find a vein that wouldn't collapse. I have very small veins, always have had.
And how quickly did you start to feel a little bit better?
5 days. My
That's
knees
it.
stopped hurting. My brain fog went away. 5 days.
Did you ever imagine in your life that you could have such a radical transformation in such a short amount of time?
No, I didn't. I was not expecting it. I really was not expecting that to happen, but that's exactly what happened in 5 days. And so what happened is I stayed with Dr. Nemec for about 1.5 years. And then I decided that I wanted to explore the plant-based community because I started looking at YouTube videos with the Esseltons and Dr. McDougall and a lot of people. I didn't discover Dr. Montgomery until a little bit later, although I used to see his pictures sometime. I didn't fall in love with him until a little bit later. But I decided that I didn't want to go there anymore. And then someone told me about Dr. Kim Williams and that he was right here. I might have saw him on YouTube. He was right here in Chicago, close by. And so I made an appointment to visit him. And after a year, and this was after a year that I had been on a total health protocol. So I wanted to know where my heart was, if there was any improvements. And also, while I was down there in Rush, I made an appointment with the hematologist to find out about my liver enzymes, my cirrhosis of the liver. Dr. Kim Williams told me I was good, and he didn't give me an appointment to come back. I wasn't the best, but I was good because I had gained some weight, and some of the foods that I should not have been eating had snuck back into my diet. But when I went to see the liver specialist, what she said was she hopes that she's in as good a shape as I am when she reaches my age, and that it would take the test about 5 hours. So she's not going to reschedule me to come back, but what she would do is send the test results via my chart, and if I needed an appointment to come back, she would let me know. Well, when my chart and my test results came back, my liver enzymes were 10 and 22. Now, mind you, I did not take a drug this whole time, this whole 1.5 years. This whole year, I did not take a drug for the heart condition, liver condition, nor the diabetes.
That's pretty remarkable. What were your initial expectations when you sat out on this more nutrition-focused path? Were you expecting, just such dramatic results?
No, because I didn't know what to expect. And here's another thing. My husband at the time, he became very ill after 3 months after my heart disease disease and hepatitis diagnosis, I realized that he was really, really in really bad shape. So he had Alzheimer's, early stage dementia, and also he had end stage heart condition. But he was 87 years old, or 86 at this time. And he had been smoking since he was about 14. And I lived with him smoking for about close to 50 years in the house. And I decided to put him on the plant-based diet at the same time that I was following the Total Health Institute's diet. So I stayed faithful to the Total Institute's diet for 90 days. Then when my husband got out of the hospital, I was going to give him meat and give him more plants. And I tried to talk to him about that. But I read Esselstyn's book. I can't remember that book. Anyway, he said that it doesn't matter what your age is. If you follow a plant-based diet, your conditions can and will improve. So after I read that, because I love to read, that's one of my favorite pastimes. After I read that, I decided to put my husband on a 100% plant-based diet because he used to eat out of Culver's and Outback and the Pancake House. That's his food every day because after I changed my diet, I changed the whole household's diet. Because I feel that if it's healthy for me, it's got to be healthy for you. So why should I cook you some portion? I won't do it. I say, I'll show you how to do it. So he says he's not a cook. So he went on and ate out of those places nearly every day. And so I continued to follow the Total Health Institute protocol. And by the way, one of Dr. Nimitz treatments was to take this garlic and eat 3, 4, or 5 avocados a day. I lost 65 pounds eating 2 avocados every day in my raw salad.
All right, hold on. Let's back that up. Avocados, which by themselves have fat in them, a lot of fat for a plant-based food. Right. You still lost all that weight eating 2.
I lost all that weight eating 2 avocados every single day because I couldn't do his avocado soup, but I would put the avocados in my raw salad. I did. I lost 65 pounds. It just melted off of me. I never thought that I would see this size again in this lifetime at this age. I am so proud of the way I look and feel.
You should be. I mean, especially given everything that you have been through. I mean, that's amazing. Do you remember the last time it was in your life prior to now that you are the weight that you are? So like for me, 140, I mean, I was 140 when I was in middle school already. And that was the last time until, I went plant-based that I saw 140 again. So do you remember the last time you were this weight?
Last time I was 140 was probably around 1969 when I first started dating my husband. Somewhere around there. We had our first date the day after Halloween in 1969. And that's probably about the last time. I've been on everybody's diet, Atkins, you name it. There's no diet I haven't been on. I tried them all, including the keto. And I would lose weight and gain it back.
So what's the difference between a plant-based diet now and all those other years of different diets? What makes this raw food plant-based diet the one that works so well?
Well, my cravings have gone away for one. And since January, since I found out about the cancer diagnosis, I tightened up my plant-based diet. I stopped making all those peanut butter cookies. I don't think it was Camel. It was Jill or that other lady's cookies. I had snuck back a lot of bread into my diet. And one of the main things is I was eating at the Greasy Spoon vegetarian restaurant all too often.
Yep. I guess, do you believe in that notion that just because it's vegan doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy?
It really doesn't, and I cringe when I see all that grease. Cause January the 1st of 2023, I weighed 142. So after I felt this lump, and my daughter-in-law invited me to go see about it, and I told her that I would. I started doing some of the things that I knew to do that I had learned at the Total Health Institute. I started taking the garlic. I stopped making the cookies. I stopped eating out. And I went from, by the time I talked to Dr. Lim, because I called him first before I talked with Dr. Montgomery. And by the time I talked with him, he asked me in January, how much did I weigh? And I said 138. And he asked me my height. He told me I was too big. I needed to get my BMI down to 21. And it was easy with Dr. Montgomery's program. It was so easy.
Where are you today again?
117 this morning.
117. Okay, look at you. All right. So if you were 140 in 1969, the day after Halloween, Halloween. I mean, when were you 117? I mean, or 1968, 1967? Do you even remember?
Somewhere in there, and it might have been in the early 70s. For a very short time, I don't remember which diet I went on, but I lost some weight and I went down to about the size that I am now. But I didn't keep it off for a month or two.
Keeping that weight off can be a difficult thing. But I think that's another advantage for the whole food plant-based, especially raw diet. It's so nutrient dense, but not necessarily calorically dense, that you're always full, you're not hungry. And I mean, maybe you had the same experience as a lot of other people in that if you're on a diet, but you're hungry, that's the end of that diet right there, because you can only do that but so many days.
And I used to be a sweetaholic too. When I was working, I would go across the street to Fannie Mae's and buy a pound of chocolate and sit in my car and eat it so no one would ask me for any. That's how much of a sweetaholic I was.
You would go through a pound of chocolate by yourself?
From Fannie Mae, yes.
Ooh, okay. Man, that's sweet too.
I used to wonder why I had all those sweet cravings uncontrollably. Well, I don't have them today. And I try and tell my clients those cravings will go away, and they will.
Look, believe you me, as a guy that used to weigh 420 pounds and was woefully addicted to that kind of food, they subside with time. But you got to be a little bit patient. But the most important thing is just get them out.
Right. Even now, today, I have a weakness for sweets, and I know that. And even I have to control the plant-based sweets. But even though I try and control the plant-based sweets, they don't kick up cravings in me that I have to go on and on and on the way that it used to be. Mm-hmm. So I can, kind of take it and leave it. But sometimes I just take it too much.
Couple more things, Vivian, that I want to ask you about is you also, I mean, we've touched on a lot of your ailments, but we haven't really yet talked about your cataract as well is something that you have, little something going on with your eye, but you've also seen some improvements there, haven't you?
Yes. In 2020, January of 2020, someone, I think Mary Ellen, the leader of the Veg and Out group, asked me if I knew AJ, and I didn't know AJ. So I found out about AJ and her 21-day diet program, and I needed a reset because I was making a lot of Plant Strong cookies and everybody else's cookies during December and November. And my daughter-in-law wanted to lose weight, so I sent her the book. I went on Amazon, I ordered a book for myself, and then I ordered one from her, and I went through it. I said, let's go on this program, and I'll go with you. So about 6 months before that, I had gone and had my eyes checked, and she said that my cataracts were progressing, and I needed cataract surgery, and I didn't want it. So she said, well, come back in 6 months for a pre-check. So for 21 days in January, my daughter-in-law and I both went on AJ's 21-day program. And let me tell you, when I went for my checkup the first week of February, she examined my eyes. She said, your eyes are getting better. Now here I am, 77 years old, and she tells me my cataracts are reversing.
That's a little bit different experience than when you were in the hospital a couple of years before and they gave you a whole list of issues that you had. And now they're telling you with this other thing, you're looking better.
Yes, I'm looking better. Matter of fact, my checkup last year, she said, with my glasses, I'm good. I'm 20/20 and don't need any surgery.
Look at you. Okay. I see you. And clearly you see everybody else now too. That's impressive right there. And now let's also talk about, you mentioned cancer a couple times. So you have been diagnosed with breast cancer. How is that going right now? Where do things stand?
Well, one day I decided to join. I'm a member of Dr. Montgomery's community, health community. And one day I hadn't joined any events for a while. And one day I decided to join, and Dr. Montgomery was there. So I sent him, this was on a Zoom. So I sent him a private message telling him that I had recently been diagnosed with breast cancer, and I wanted to heal it with nutrition. And I asked him if he could help me. He said, yes, I can. Call Jackie, my assistant. And so I had also looked at a couple of lectures by Dr. McDougall where he had said, no chemo, no radiation, and really he didn't exactly say the drugs, but that's what I did. So anyway, I was told that I need to go to Houston, Texas for 4 to 6 weeks. And so I told Jackie I had to think about it. And then 15 minutes later, I said, what am I thinking about? I know I need some help. I'm going. So I called back and said, I'll go for 4 weeks. I actually stayed for 31 days. I'll go for 4 weeks. And I went and I stayed in a hotel for those 31 days. And I went 5 days a week for treatments with Dr. Montgomery's protocol. And he has the nicest people working for him. That I just enjoyed myself. I found really, really, really sweet, loving people who work for Dr. Montgomery's in Dr. Montgomery's office there in Houston. And also last October, I went to T. Campbell's health retreat, and they were so lovely and kind also. I was impressed with both of them.
So what was your treatment protocol like when you were there for those 31 days? What was your routine?
Okay. Intermittent raw food diet, intermittent eating protocol, 5 hours, and fasting pretty much 19 hours a day to give my body a chance to heal. FYI, Camille, his PA assistant, they did a lot of extensive labs, and she told me my labs were fantastic. And so I had ozone treatment, infrared sauna treatment, Myers vitamin C treatment, the eating program. And so I knew about all of these things, but I didn't know about the sauna thing. But let me tell you this. I had not taken the MRI before I went there because I canceled it because they wanted me to fill out some papers that if something go wrong, they wouldn't be responsible. I said, well, that's not for my benefit. That must be for theirs. So Dr. Montgomery asked me to come home and get the MRI. So I came home Saturday, and that Wednesday, I got the MRI. And this is what I really, really didn't believe. The oncologist that's trying to get me to have my lump removed, and I'm probably going to do it anyway, and see the radiologist. And I told her, stop calling me because chemotherapy, radiation, and cancer drugs are off the table. She called me to tell me that my lump had gone from 3.2 to 2.5 or something like that. And my one lymph node that was affected was clear. That's what she told me after being there with Dr. Montgomery for 31 days.
Wow, that's a pretty incredible result. You must be pretty pleased with that. I see you smiling when you said that, so yeah, you must be happy.
I couldn't believe it. I wasn't expecting that after 31 days. I could not believe it. I'm so happy that I didn't get that MRI before. I never would have known that if I left, if I had not. But I'm watching it though, because it's still here. But even though the lump is still here, my health has improved and I feel better than ever.
How often do you get that check now? What is the monitoring looking like?
Okay, I just had it checked Friday before last. And I made an appointment to see the surgeon too, because I'm seriously thinking about having the lump removed. Because I got the okay from Dr. Montgomery. Dr. McDougall recommended having the lump removed too, and so does my primary doctor. I have Dr. Garg as my primary doctor, and Dr. Kim Williams referred me to him. He said he had trained him in a plant-based lifestyle here in Illinois. So I have made this appointment, and I had another MRI. He suggested that I have another mammogram and ultrasound because that's where I started.
Right.
My plan had been to never ever have another mammogram again, and I only had one in my life. Was that first one that they diagnosed the cancer with. That's the only mammogram I've ever had.
Well, I mean, it seems like you're on a healthy path and you're getting some good advice here. So definitely wish you the best with that moving forward. And we can't wrap up today also without talking. We've talked a lot about nutrition, but beyond that, I know one of the things that you really practice a lot is meditation. How has that helped you over the course of all of the myriad of issues that you've been facing in your life and keeping you on a healthier path?
Well, I did not start meditating until I was 66 years old. And it truly has been life transforming, because I used to have a lot of issues. I didn't like me. I didn't like life. I didn't like people and all of that kind of thing. But now I do remember this. Before I started meditating, I was one of those people who, like I say, I was always thought to be a little crazy and different. Even when I was working, my one best friend, the other employees used to ask her, how could she be friends with me? So after I started meditating, and people would come up to me and say, they love being in my company, and I seem so outgoing and this and that, I would actually turn around and see who they were talking to, because I couldn't believe they would talk to me.
I can't envision you being a grumpy Gus now. You just seem like the most positive person in the world to me.
Well, I read Norman Vincent Peale's Positive Thinking way back in the 70s, but it's not that. It's the meditation that I think that has, not just the meditation, because I did a lot of reading and a lot of studying. And, not to say I don't want to denigrate my mom, but she was verbal abusive, and I married my mother. And so I learned through meditation, I learned how to not react to the stuff that I was hearing. And you believe it or not, I stopped getting it. Because, sometimes when he would say mean, nasty things, and you know how you get that. And so I would say to myself, I would pause and take 3 deep breaths. I've heard Pema Chodron teach this, 3 deep breaths. And I would pause and take those 3 deep breaths. And I would think, do I want to respond or do I not want to respond? Because if I do, because he's very quick with it and I am not. By the time I think of something that I could have said, it's the next day.
Yeah.
And I say, if I respond, it's going to go like this. So I stopped responding.
And there you go.
It's got so much better.
Well, listen, Vivian, like I said, you are the walking personification, the walking example that it's never too late, right? You switched to all of this much later in life than a lot of people, certainly much later than anybody would think it could be for there to be significant changes. And yet here you are. Your heart's doing fine, it sounds like. We haven't heard anything else about AFib since you left the hospital and you got home. You're doing real good there. You're taking good care of yourself in other ways too. So keep us up to date on how everything's going with the breast cancer. But given everything that you've said, I mean, I just can't see anything but a bright, healthy future for you.
That's what I see. And my message also to people is that it's never too late. Never too late. If I can live the life that I lived previously, and you wouldn't believe this, I was in a coma for 3 days trying to end it.
What? Okay. That's a wrinkle of the story that we have not heard.
Yes.
So you truly did find the will to live. What happened there?
It was just too much. Life was just too much. I can understand. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I remember that feeling. It was just too much.
And yet here you are today.
Yes.
And here you are today. You really are. You are a role model, an example, and I'm just thrilled to have had this time with you today. So thank you for being brave and sharing your story and being so vulnerable with us. You really, really, really are. You are a lighthouse for us today. So thank you, Vivian.
Thank you so much. And it's my honor to have been here and to have spoken with you, Chuck, and to get the story out there as much as possible.
The honor is all mine.
You can always change, but you got to be willing to give up something.